In Gqeberha, a 10-year-old boy, Elviro Langford, died this week after he fell into an unsecured manhole. In other words, he literally fell into a hole in the earth and ended up in the pipe and sewage system. Now the political party ActionSA demanding action against the contractor who left that hole open. Athol Trollip is the Eastern Cape leader of ActionSA. Athol, good afternoon to you. What do you believe went wrong here?
Well, first of all, Stephen, good afternoon to you. I just want to give you some perspective. Mission Vale is a part of Nelson Mandela Bay that gained notoriety because in the 2014, 2015, the then ANC government built houses without any infrastructure and no toilets. So what they did was they built houses in an area that was a very low-lying area that's prone to flooding, and there was no road infrastructure and no sewage infrastructure, which they had to then try and put bulk services into that area after the houses had been built, which is really back to front. And I remember at the time, during the 2016 local government elections, I coined the phrase that the previous government had built toilets without houses, because there were many standalone toilets in the metro and houses without toilets. So what's happening there now is that they are trying to address the fact that that area is always flooding whenever there's rain, because you have stormwater ingression into the sewage systems, and then the sewage systems block up, and then they also spill over, and they're forever digging and excavating there. And what's happened is that young Elviro Langford fell into one of those excavations, and the community pulled him out, but they were unable to save his life. So I've written to the mayor to say that we need an urgent intervention in Mission Vale, Warmer Township, and especially the township of Motherwell. Because what happens there, every time there's rain, you have stormwater systems that flood the sewage systems, they block up, and then people have sewage coming up into their homes. So I've written to him a number of times this year already, the mayor and the MMC and the chief director of engineering, to no avail. They just cannot fix this problem. And now we've got children drowning in sewage systems and also in excavations. We also have a major problem where manhole covers for stormwater systems and sewage systems are being stolen. And people are putting all sorts of things into those stormwater and sewage systems, things such as mattresses and tires and all sorts of things, and they block up. And then the areas get saturated in sewage and water, and kids go and play there because they've got nothing else to do, and kids end up drowning. And I've asked for an investigation into this matter to find out who was responsible or whether there was dereliction of responsibility by the contractors.
Athol, I mean, it's a terrible situation. There are other parts of the country that have this problem too. Do you believe that the administration in Nelson Mandela Bay is actually able to deal with this? I mean, do they have the resources to fix the situation in Motherwell?
My experience and my belief is no, they don't. And I say that not just because I've sucked that out of my thumb. It's because I've been writing to the administration for the last 6 months about sewage systems that are blocked, about people living in formal homes who have to go and use, the bushes outside to relieve themselves because sewage is pushing back into their homes. I was in Warmer Township just last week. The whole township is awash with sewage and wastewater. So I don't believe that they have the expertise or the means or even the inclination to fix it, because my experience is that poor, disadvantaged communities are expected to live in sewage and saturated streets and homes, whereas in other areas they make a plan and they scrape together some cash and they address it. If you do write to them, it does take a while, but they will ultimately address it. But my experience is in poor, neglected township communities, nothing gets done, and they don't really care. And I can say that with conviction, because I could give you chapter and verse of how many times I've made telephone calls, sent WhatsApps, written emails, spoken to the chief of staff, spoken to the rapid response task team member, spoken to the mayor, written to the mayoral committee member, and they just don't care. And that's the thing that, really perturbs me, is that poor people don't have the means to fix these kind of bulk service issues themselves. It's the responsibility of the municipality to fix bulk service issues like sewage and water. And if they don't fix it, those communities just then swim in sewage and water, and then massive health hazards. cholera. I wrote to the administration last year to say that this is going to lead to a cholera outbreak. There was a cholera outbreak in Warmer. With this hot, warm summer weather coming now, the chances of that happening again is very, very strong. And then, of course, children drowning, like Elviro Langford. So these are the consequences of the neglect that we're witnessing in Nelson Mandela Bay.
The risk, of course, is that Elviro, I don't think he's the first in Gqeberha, and the concern is that the other children, I mean, it is a terrible, always to die, particularly children, but this is a particularly awful way. This is very likely now to happen again, unfortunately.
It is, because children are attracted to water. Children will, float pieces of paper or whatever onto water, and if it floats away, they'll wade in and try and retrieve whatever they're floating or boating in water, blissfully unaware that it's sewage and that it could be potentially contaminated with some kind of disease. They don't know that. Children just are attracted to water, so they go and play there, and they get out of their depth, and as soon as they get out of their depth, their peers can't help them because very often they can't swim, and then they run and go and call for help, and by the time the help comes, people have already been submerged. And if you go underwater in sewage, the chances of drowning is escalated tremendously because you are then taking in, sewage water and not just plain water, and that takes your breath away much quicker. So I'm afraid that the chances of this happening again, especially in the township areas, in the low-lying township areas of Nelson Mandela Bay, is very strong. And that is why I've written to the mayor to say, look, what are you going to do about this?
As I understand it, there's actually going to be another confidence vote in the mayor, Gqeberha, from the Northern Alliance, fairly soon. He's in power, I think, through support from the ANC and the EFF. Do you want him out in this vote? Do you believe that there's a chance that parties will vote to remove him?
Well, look, he really has not been a great mayor at all. And, he comes from a party with 3 seats, but they're effectively only 2, because one of their councillors does not vote with them, and there's been a split in that party. It's gone from being called the Northern Alliance to the National Alliance, and really they are at 6s and 7s. But what I find really interesting is that the ANC themselves have said they're going to reevaluate all their coalitions that they're involved in across the country because they are underperforming. So Nelson Mandela Bay is definitely one of those underperforming coalitions. So is Johannesburg, obviously, and Ekurhuleni. So it remains to be seen whether the ANC will actually do something about being involved in underperforming coalitions. Yes, there is a motion of no confidence in Gqeberha. I read it last week. But, in fact, I read it this week. But what troubled me about that motion of no confidence, if I can make a comment about it, it was actually more about his personal appearances and his hairstyle and what he looks like and how he dresses, which I thought was really puerile. If we can just get to a stage in local government where if a mayor and his mayoral committee are performing well and the city is benefiting from that, let them govern. If they're not performing well and the city is not benefiting from an effective administration, well, then bring a motion of no confidence. But for Pete's sake, it cannot be about his hairstyle or his appearances. It just makes it so puerile. And I'm afraid, my own personal experience in Nelson Mandela Bay was that they really are ploughing unimaginable depths in that municipal council. The debate is deplorable. People don't concentrate on the real issues, which is service delivery. All the indicators that were improving during the time when I was the mayor there have suddenly gone in the wrong direction, and they're all a mess. And Nelson Mandela Bay is really just quite a decrepit place right now.
Athol Trollip, thank you very much indeed. Eastern Cape leader of ActionSA.